What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, and in this video we're going to be breaking down a new Overwatch hero tier list. That's right, with all the new changes coming soon and just the state of the game as it is, we're going to be breaking down the best and worst heroes for tanks, DPS, and support, so that you know exactly who you should main, pick up, or start grinding for this next competitive season. Now, speaking of the next competitive season, if you want to surpass your limits, become broken, and just climb the ladder, then you definitely need to go check out GameLeap.com. Everyone always tells me that they love VOD reviews over their favorite character, and we have tons of them. So if you want to improve, you want to see step-by-step instruction on things you're doing right and wrong, whether it's positioning, mechanics, or whatever, definitely go check it out, and I know you'll enjoy it. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now, before we get started, keep in mind that I'm going to be adding a X factor and a flex factor into some heroes. So X factor would be the most potential for upward movement, and I'm going to give one X factor per role. And then there's also the flex factor, which is the most powerful character as a counter pick character. So even if it's low on the tier list, as far as just picking it to counter something that the enemy is doing, that character will be immensely powerful. Now, let's start it right off with the tanks, because tanks dictate metas, and you need to know what tanks are going to be played if you need to know what everything else is going to be built around it. So we got to keep in mind that Sigma, Orisa both got nerfed, Brig got nerfed, and Roadhog got buffed. I'm going to talk more about that all in a little bit, but we need to keep in mind all those things when deciding what the new tier list is going to be. The two biggest candidates that will most likely be S tier is Reinhardt and Hammond. Reinhardt just because as a shield tank, he has the best stats, with Sigma being nerfed. If double shield is out of the meta, which is exactly what the developers have said, that these nerfs are going to be targeting double shield, Reinhardt is the far and away winner without double shield in the meta, so he is going to be moved up to the S tier. And Hammond is still a sleeper in my mind. He has insanely high pick rate at the highest ranks. Hammond is good for those of you who put in the time and effort. He is honestly one of the best and hardest carry tanks in the entire game right now, really. Hammond can get so much value, bait out tons of cooldowns, never die, and he's extremely good against Ryan based compositions like Ryan Zarya or Ryan Sigma. Hammond has a lot of game against those compositions, and for that reason he's in the S tier. Now, moving on to the A tier, we have three characters: Zarya, Sigma, who was downgraded here from S tier, and then Roadhog, who got upgraded, which is a pretty optimistic upgrade, but I'm going to explain my reasoning. So first off, Zarya is one of the best inherent combos with Reinhardt. Reinhardt and Zarya work really well together, everyone knows that, and because Ryan is going to be so much better, so is Zarya as a result. Sigma gets a downgrade, but not as far down as Orisa. Double shield is something that makes both Sigma and Orisa more powerful, and they're both played a lot more, but Sigma can get a lot of value in other compositions with other combos, and even Ryan Sigma is probably going to be pretty powerful. Not quite as oppressive as the double shield Sigma Orisa, but Sigma can still get tons of value and make plays in his own right. Last up, Hog, who's probably the lowest on the A tier list. Hog's buff is actually really legitimate. The fact that Hog can one-shot every single squishy in the game now means you have to respect his lethality. The fact that the overall healing because of Brig's nerf goes down in the game is definitely a buff for Hog. Hog is going to be one of the hardest carry heroes, even more so at the lower ranks, maybe all the way up to Grandmaster and beyond. I could imagine that Hog is going to see a lot more play going forward. Now, as far as him being meta, I'm not quite sure, because there are a lot of counters to Roadhog, especially characters like Ana, who are going to be in our S tier, spoiler alert. So I don't know if Roadhog will see that much meta play, but as far as ranked play, Roadhog is definitely going to be A tier. Now, moving on to B tier, we got to talk about Orisa, who was downgraded, and we got to talk about Monkey, who has their X Factor bonus. So Orisa is downgraded here, even though the movement speed of her pool is increased. The fact that her raw HP total was decreased, and her best partner in Sigma is a lot worse shield-wise, meaning that Orisa Sigma double shield is most likely not feasible. Now, if you don't recall, Orisa's shield already wasn't really that strong at being a solo shield in the first place, and the double shield aspect kind of compensated for the fact that her shield could be really easily destroyed just by itself. Now, with this duo weaker, I do think that Orisa could probably get some value with like a Roadhog pull hook combo, but we're gonna have to wait and see, because that power level really depends on how strong Roadhog is individually as a character and how well the meta shapes around these characters. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that one, but for now, Orisa is only gonna be in the B tier, and then Monkey is in the B tier for a number of reasons. His partner in crime, D.Va, is having a rough go at it, let's just say that, and and he can dive with a character like Hammond, but unlike Hammond, who could almost do his own thing and really play realistically with any character, Monkey is way more one-dimensional, and I do think that he's pretty difficult to play, especially when you don't have the right team to follow up his in-game actions. Now, he will get the X Factor bonus because he does have the most potential for upward movement, but we're gonna have to wait and see on him as well. Now, last up, C tier is D.Va. D.Va's just been having a bad go at it. They've been consistently and slowly buffing D.Va, but it hasn't been enough to overcome a lot of the other powerful characters in the game. D.Va is going to be relegated to C tier until we see some meaningful buffs, or maybe the rise of a Monkey D.Va dive meta, but that hasn't been around in a long time, so we're going to have to wait and see on all of that. Definitely let me know what you would like to see D.Va get as far as buffs are concerned in order to make her B, A, or even S tier. Now moving on to the next heroes on the list, we're going to go through these a little bit quicker. We need to talk about the DPS heroes. Now in the S tier, we're going to talk about Ashe, Widow, Tracer, and McCree. Yes, it's population hit scan up in here, but these characters are far and away the best right now as far as S tier, and they look to be very good going forward. Ashe is just one of the most versatile and incredibly powerful DPS characters that you could pick right now. You get a Mercy Pocket on her and she could be unstoppable in the right hands, but even without a Mercy Pocket, she got the burst fire, she got the consistent damage, she got the mobility. There's just so much that Ashe has to offer. That's why she's in the S tier. Now, Widow is a character that's going to see exponentially more play in higher ranks, but for those people that can really access her potential, Widow is just going to click heads, and it's going to be even worse after Double Shield is gone. Now, there are counters to that, specifically characters like Hammond, other divers that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So there is counterplay to Widow, but everyone knows that the best actual counter to a good Widow is a Widow of your own. Now, moving on to the next character on the S tier is Tracer. Tracer is going to be a lot better with this Brig change. And you might be saying, yes, Brig can heal more on herself than before. This is true, but having just less raw health total, that really matters for a burst damage character like Tracer and Genji, who we're going to talk about in a second. But the fact that Brig is just going to be worse as well is really going to help Tracer be better or seen more in the meta. So this is great news for Tracer players. She is now an S tier. And then the last character in S tier is McCree, the old reliable, very consistent at dealing with flankers, divers, dealing damage on the front line. He's your most catch-22 DPS character that you could possibly pick. He's never really bad in any scenario, and he's always pretty decent. He might not excel at any one specific thing, but McCree is your go-to if you're just looking for a very well-balanced DPS. Now moving on to the A tier, we got to talk about Genji, Junkrat, Torb, and Mei. So Genji in particular, he is still buffed from where he was originally, but with that damage nerf, everyone really felt it. Genji just isn't the go into your backline and kill 3 people character anymore. That was maybe broken a little bit, but Genji is still powerful in the right hands, and of course with combos like Nano Blade, he can get a fair amount of value. It's especially nice if Rein sees a lot more play, because Genji doesn't have to be so aggressive to get ult charge. He can be poking, breaking shields, reflecting fire strikes, and that could be a really legitimate way that Genji's build up Blade instead of having to go behind the double shield, trying to be really aggressive and maybe getting punished for it. Now, Junkrat has been seeing quite a bit of play at the tail end of double shield, and if double shield is not dead, Junkrat is going to see even more play. Now, that being said, Junkrat might actually get downgraded from A tier to B tier coming pretty soon, but for now, he's in the A tier, and he's very powerful on a select number of maps like Temple of Anubis defense, Eichenwald defense, and much more. Play Junkrat on the appropriate maps for him, and he's definitely an A tier. Now, the next character is Torb, who is just actually pretty good. Torb can get a fair amount of value breaking shields. He's pretty good at the front line. He has very good anti-flank prevention in his turret, and as long as you don't use his wretched alternate fire and just use his primary fire, his DPS is actually pretty good. So don't sleep on Torb. He is one of the best DPS heroes in the entire game, actually. Now, last up in the A tier is Mei, who everyone knows how annoying it is to play against a Mei, but Mei, as far as abilities are concerned, has the potential to just single-handedly hard carry a game. You play her on defense, something like Hanamura, wall off their tank a couple of fights, and your team just builds up such an ultimate advantage that it just becomes impossible for the enemies to win. Mei is very good at helping your tanks, ability management. She can be the difference in helping your tanks, like your Rein Zarya, beat better tanks on the enemy team because you're consistently helping them, helping the front line, putting pressure into the enemy. Mei is just one of those characters that will always be incredibly strong in the right hands. Now moving on to the B tier, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. We got to talk about Doomfist, Echo, Soldier, Pharah, who got upgraded, and Reaper. Now, any of these characters are fine. They're good in the right scenarios, but none of them are fantastic. Doomfist can be good, but he could also get shut down. And with characters like Roadhog getting a buff, Doomfist has another thing he has to look out for. Characters like Echo, when the entire S tier is hit scans, she is going to be under threat. Soldier is just weaker than all the other available hit scan options. Pharah is really powerful now because of the upgrade, the fact that she can transition faster, glide faster, but like we said, the entire S tier is filled with hit scans, so that is why she's only in the B tier. And then Reaper is actually really slept on in my opinion. He's really powerful, especially if people are playing Roadhog more, Zarya more. Reaper can abuse a lot of these characters, but in some scenarios, he has a hard time routing to the appropriate places. So it really depends map-wise. And I think on certain maps, like specifically a lot of the Koth maps, Reaper can get a whole bunch of value. Now moving on to the C tier, we got to talk about Symmetra, Hanzo, and Sombra. Now, Symmetra's in the C tier because she's kind of niche. I don't think that she's weak by any means, but she's not going to see any play in a pro meta. She probably will definitely see a certain amount of play in the ranked meta, but she's not going to be one of those consistently picked heroes that everyone adheres to. It's more of a character that people specialize in, not necessarily a character that everyone plays. Now, Hanzo's in the C tier, unfortunately, but he does have that X factor, and that X factor means that he has the highest potential to actually move up the tiers. Hanzo was really getting dumpstered by Genji for a while, and Hanzo still has a lot of characters that could definitely threaten him. But when we're talking about characters like McCree, who he can outrange, or Tracer, who he can one-shot, or Widow, who he can duel, or Ashe, who he can out-headshot as long as the Ashe doesn't have a pocket. There is a lot of potential here for Hanzo, for someone with the right skill set to play Hanzo. We'll have to wait and see on this one how the meta pans out going forward. Now, the next character, Sombra, she's going to have the flex factor bonus, meaning that she is, yes, in the C tier, but she only gets picked so little because she's not really a good character to have consistent impact. But when you're specifically countering an enemy character's pick, like a Hammond or a Doomfist or whatever, she could be triple S tier, and that is why Sombra is the flex factor bonus, even though she's in the C tier. In the right scenario, S tier plus. Now, moving on to the F tier, there's only one character in the F tier, and it's Bastion. Now, I know you're gonna say, Bastion is ruining my games. Well, yes, F tier Bastion, typically, if you counter him, which I've made multiple videos about, by the way, so go watch those, and then Bastion will actually be F tier for you, but Bastion is triple S tier if you don't counter him. So counter the freaking Bastion, go watch the videos, go get a GameLeap.com premium sub and find more information about how to counter Bastion, and that's all you need to know about that. Now moving on to the next category, we got to talk about the supports, and in the S tier, we got Ana and Lucio, who got upgraded. So Lucio is getting upgraded because Brig is getting downgraded, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but with Ryan seeing more play, with Zarya potentially seeing more play, with Ana already being good, a natural pairing for these type of characters would be Lucio. Lucio was kind of being held under by Brig, and with these sizable Brig nerfs, which they are sizable, Brig is not going to be seeing as much inherent meta play. She might be seeing like flex play, but I think Lucio is going to see a big uptick in play here. Now moving on to the A tier, we have Brig, who is downgraded from S tier to A tier. Still good, still could be used to counter a lot of divers, but you're going to have to play a lot safer on her, and characters that have burst damage, specifically characters like Genji, Tracer, even characters like Doomfist, these characters are going to have to look out for a lot more. There's just a lot more threats that you have, and your play needs to be far more disciplined on Brig, or you're going to get punished. And then Moira, who's going to have that flex factor. Moira is one of the best characters to flex to if you're getting dumpstered. Like, you're playing Ana, you're not getting peel, you just swap to Moira. Moira has all the capabilities to heal your team, especially if you utilize and save the resource, the heal resource. Make sure that you save your fade for when you absolutely need it to save you. Moira could be that character that you need when your team still needs heals, but for some reason they're unwilling to peel, so that's who you swap to in those scenarios. Then we're going to the B tier, characters that are fine at doing their job, Baptiste and Mercy. Both these characters are good in certain scenarios. Mercy could even be S tier when she's pocketing a good Ashe, but it all really depends. Sometimes Mercies just want to be playing with their team, or they don't have a good enough DPS to pocket, and the value that you get on Mercy is just mediocre. Now, Baptiste could be very good. He was seeing a lot more play in double shield, so he's most likely downgraded here. That being said, however, Baptiste amp plus Fire Strike is a very powerful combo. Baptiste still has one of the best solo carry kits in the entire game, so for you players that are trying to find a character that can really carry ranked games, Baptiste might be the character you want to pick up. Now moving on to the C tier, we got to talk about Zen, who did get upgraded. He got quite a few buffs in the recent patch, and he will have that X factor, most potential for upward movement. Still, even with his upgrades, it doesn't fix Zen's fundamental problem, which is like he's a glass cannon, and he's really susceptible to all sorts of things. Genji's, Tracer's, now Doomfist, they're just gonna delete Zenyatta. I mean, how do you duel a Genji on Zen now that Genji can cancel his reflect? Is that even possible? Like, it's just not. Now with Tracer's 15-meter range, it is very hard to duel her on Zen as well. It's just everything has been slowly getting buffs and buffs and buffs, and Zen hasn't gotten a buff in survivability in any meaningful way, so I am gonna put him in the C tier here. But if you're up against a Doomfist, a good one, Zen's F tier. I'm sorry, he's just F tier. Anyways, what do you think about the tier list? Is your favorite character in S tier? And if it's not, do you disagree with my list? Do you think that it should be an S tier? Why or why not? Anyways, thank you for coming by. Hope you enjoy the content. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time,